Everybody. My name is Ryan Fogelman. I'm here to do a virtual presentation for the Global Dust Safety Conference. I am going to discuss lithium-ion batteries and the hazards that they cause in the waste and recycling industry. So I'm going to go through the scope of the problems. I'm going to go through the things that we've done over the past 6 years to, become better operators, and the investments that we've made to mitigate the risk, and then really working with the insurance companies and you know and bringing them back to the industry. So that's a big part as far as how do we mitigate those risks and control the costs. So I do have an annual waste and recycling report that will be published either the end of this month, which is February, and then March. Um, or in March. I'm finishing it up, but I will say a lot of the data is actually inside this presentation. If you do want to copy, my emails are fogelman@firerover.com. I'm happy to send you a PDF version. So let's talk about the scope of the problem. So basically, if you look at fires, over the past 5 years, I've been reporting fires. And the reason that I've been reporting, this is all the data by month. But really, if you look at an overall basis, in the US and Canada, we've had 317 on average fire incidences that were reported by a public, by a media outlet. And so the reason that I use that as my data was when I first started, looking at the industry. There was a lot of I don't want to call it a cover up, but just there was a lot of things that were happening on tip floors and on scrap metal sites where there was inherent risk of fire in the industry and in the business, but it was maintainable. You would have some fires, and about 50% were those traditional hazards. Lithium ion batteries brought an entirely new hazard to focus. And again, when you look at lithium ion batteries, they're a relatively safe, they're a relatively safe type of technology. They're amazing, right? They've made our world amazing. But the problem is that you're not having a ton of issues in the front end of the supply chain, but the back end of the supply chain, where waste and recyclers, who, if you really truly think about recycling, the goal of recycling is to ensure that you put the least amount of material inside your landfills. So if you look at waste and recycling, the amount of curbside recycling plus construction and demolition recycling, which that's all the buildings, and if you have a hurricane, all that material that gets recycled instead of going to a landfill, and then scrap metal, where they're taking and reusing metals, is an amazing amount of tonnage that doesn't go in. So really, at the end of the day, we have this unbelievable technology that's the costs and the hazards are being burdened by an industry that I don't want to say needs help, but definitely needed a new approach to look at it. But at the same time, could use some producer responsibility where the manufacturers, help solve the problem, as opposed to sitting a little bit in the earlier of the supply chain, and not necessarily admitting that or actually taking responsibility for the problem. The reported fires that I did go after, or that I do consolidate, are all reported from basically Google alerts, right? And in the beginning, there was no data out there. So fire plus transfer station on a Google alert. And if I saw a fire, I would report it at the end of the month. Same with MRF, shredder, waste management, recycling. So this year was an exciting year. We do have the Fire Rover client saves, and saves are different than an incident, but these are when we've actually put a fire out that was happening, right? So, in 2020, we put out 207. We're in 182 locations. We're in 8 of the top 10 waste and recycling organizations, in the US and Canada, which, so we've been blessed that we've been able to prove that our solution works. But really the goal is to try to take the publicly reported fires and watch them go down. And what I'm hoping is that in 18, the U.S. and Canada, as well as countries and operators across the globe, had seen the increase in lithium-ion batteries. I mean, basically, they didn't know they were coming. Well, now that they know that they're coming and they've prepared, and there's some that have taken technology to another level. There are some that are still a non-believer in what the technology can do. But really, at the end of the day, the goal is that as we get more client saves, there's going to be less reported fires, and then obviously less known fire incidences, and then reasonable amount of fires. And the reason I use reasonable amount is that, I look at a reasonable population assumption of the UK that actually does a great job reporting these fires because they have the environmental agency that requires that these fires are reported. And reasonable population, it's about 5 to 6 times different. The 67 million people in the UK, the 360 million in the US and Canada. So a lot of times you'll see the reasonable fires and the amount of fires. The fires are not going to go down over the years, right? We're still going to have fires, and with lithium-ion battery being 50% of the problem today, and who knows what it's going to become in the future, the uh, the fires are going to increase. The question is how we handle the fires needs to stop or lower the risk of of catastrophic and severity of fires, as opposed to trying to avoid the issue by education and other ways that are not going to put the fires out, right? So if you look at this is the data from 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. And again, you can see that waste paper and plastic makes up about 50% of the fires over the last 5 years. The reason I include all those, if you look, the UK will do the same thing where they'll include hazardous, or they'll include household recyclables as well as transfer stations, which is pretty well what this number is. Scrap metal is definitely its own animal. And again, we had a huge spike in 2018. The numbers went down, and into 20, they have been going up steadily for the past 5 years, at 103 per year. And again, scrap metal, I'll get into specifically, but they the industry has focused on traditional tactics they'd used before to try to solve their problem, and they become better operators. But the question becomes, can the things that they've put in actually start to decrease the fires, or are we only seeing what waste and paper and plastic has put in that's going to show the effectiveness? We also have C&D, which is construction and demolition. It's probably underreported. Some of that is in waste paper and plastic, just based on misunderstanding of what the reporters, what they report on. The big thing right now is electronic scrap. The idea that a lot of entrepreneurs are trying to pull the rare earth metals and the lithium-ion batteries out of electronics. And again, there are some really good innovators and there's some great operators out there, but there's also a lot of guys who are just trying to build a business, and they really don't understand the full hazards and risks. So e-scrap, we've seen those numbers grow. I saw 4 in December alone, so it's definitely something that we got to keep an eye on. EREF, which is the Environmental Research and Education Foundation, has put together a study that they're doing on the assessment of fires at recycling facilities and scrap metal facilities. What's nice about this is that this is the U.S. and Canada, or the U.S. version of the of the fire survey that we definitely need, and I'll show you some in the EU and the UK that have been done as well, and some of those results. But we just got some preliminary data back. EREF does a great job. They're working to try to get as many waste recycling and scrap metal operators to respond. And I think you see 286 and 281. But the interesting thing, and it's a high level fact, that basically over the last year, 75% of respondents reported having a fire. And then in the past 5 years, 90% have reported to have at least one fire. And typically when they're answering a survey, it's going to be big fires. It's the fires they remember, because a lot of these are just going back to recollection. Eunomia, which is a company in the UK, and the environmental agency had actually put out fire incident, or had put out data, a ton of data, and they also did a survey. So I'll be talking about that a lot during the scope of the problem. But in England, 49% of their fire incidences came from the transfer stations and recycling, which is about 49%, which is pretty equal to what we have. Now, the interesting thing is the scrap metal fires only account in the UK for 18% of fires, where the US, we're seeing that at 36%. And again, so what the cause of that, we're not 100% sure, but that's really what we're some of the things that we're trying to figure out the solution for. Now, what's causing the fires? Again, traditional hazards. There's always been hazards of pool chemicals and all the different pieces inside, hot ashes, paint. There's always a spike in the summer, and that's from fireworks and hot ashes. And we also believe heat and dry environments, as you look to number three. Inherent risk. A lot of these waste and recycling, like if you look at the hazard material or the waste to energy, they're actually burning the material. So that burning can get out of control, not necessarily specifically in chemicals that need to be heated to be treated. But also lithium-ion batteries. That's the big issue. We also have sparks and hot works, and then arson, which is something that you have to throw in there. But it's something that I don't know as how prevalent or how unprevalent it is, but it definitely does happen to some desperate operators, or potentially from a competitor perspective. According to California Product Stewardess Council, they did a survey of California waste operators, and 56% reported that the fires were due to batteries, and then 44%, and this was in 18. So this has really gotten to be a big issue. And then this is where I was saying the environmental agency, they've been reporting fires for for 20 years, right? And they're seeing a big number. I think the U.S. and Canadian numbers about 6 times these numbers. But again, I replaced my reported fires with the data that I've pulled, from the reported media. But then there's in 2020, and if you look at the UK fire numbers, 201 of the 418 numbers are estimated to be lithium-ion batteries. So it's about 50% of the time. And this is something that they've spent a ton from a research perspective, and the Environmental Services Association, and it was run by Eunomia. They did a great job. So I was saying in 18, we did see spikes everywhere. In Japan, their Containers and Packaging Recycling Association, I mean, they had an increase of 4 times over that 18-19 year. And they say a lot of it was primarily due to the influx of lithium-ion batteries. This slide's actually really nice. That this is actually the Fire Rover client installation. So these are, of the 182 sites, these are the different types of hazards that we cover, and waste and paper and plastic. As you can see, these are the number of Fire Rover incidences in each one of these, in each one of the specific industry niches. And so C and D, we actually cover 12% of our operations. So, we have a pretty good size of construction and demolition, and there's a lot less, but you can see they account for 13% of the fires. So it's equal. I mean, paper and plastic, it's about 72%, it's 45. I think the big question is scrap metal. We only have 8% of our customers are scrap metal facilities, but we're seeing 38% of our fire incidences in those facilities. So, they do have different risks from a scrap metal, the ASR, the light tin piles, there's a lot of the shredders, and the mobile shredders that we see sometimes in C&D and sometimes in scrap metal. But there's definitely different hazards to protect. The data that I'm going to show you here, you can get it in my annual report. It breaks everything out by state, and it starts to look at how many instances. So how good have they been performing over 2020 from a tons perspective, and from a waste perspective, or from a facility fire perspective, or how many facilities have been affected. So when I get into the consequences, so I mean, we know there's inherent risk of fire. WISH guidelines, which is the Waste Industry and Safety and Health Forum in the EU, they came out with expert guidance, and they basically said that they aim for a fire to be extinguished within 4 hours. That's considered a successful incident, from their perspective. And again, when I look at it, the issue is not the number of fires that you have, but it's always about your severity, because you could have 1 million fires, but if none of them have catastrophic or cause any damage, you're totally fine. You have one fire that causes a complete burn down, and you're looking at a ton of costs, and all the different pieces. So when you look at it, the material recycling world did a survey in 2018. 75% of the length of disruption was more than a day or more, which again, that's a long time for a business to be out. So really, when you look at the severity of fire, this is where Eunomia really did a good job, where they basically broke out the severity into like levels of 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so really, your major amount of fires are happening in 3. Your fire severity as a 1 is the worst, right? That would be that you were down for greater than 72, and it's 1% of the incidences. I believe that we have about 10 of these a year in the U.S. and Canada, but again, when you look at it, most of the costs are being borne by your three, and then sometimes like your four. But if you look at the data, I mean, you're 1 to 4 hours. So three, two, or one, which is probably 80%. They're more than 4 hours. So they're basically losing to even the wish standard definition, which I still think is I'll discuss that later, why I believe that should actually be cut down to about 15 minutes versus 4 hours. But if we start to look at the cost, Mia really did a good job looking at what the costs were. And basically what they've said is that, lithium ion batteries are causing the waste and recycling operators, the fire service and rescue, and, the environment. There's environmental issues, society, so the public at large, and then the environmental agency, which is, similar to our EPA. All the costs are being borne by us, right, in this occupancy and in this industry, and us as the public, and the manufacturers who are making all this money, like building. And again, I'm a pure capitalist, so I believe that they should be able to manufacture, but I do believe that they should be able to be held responsible for helping solve the problem. So again, we're looking at the equivalent from pounds in the U.S. to $1.2 billion a year in lithium-ion battery issues, and then 2.5 billion in total fire issues. So what they did, if you're looking at the severity of the fire, yeah, the ones were about 5 million U.S. or 3.8 million pounds, but you're still looking at significant damage, right? You're looking at 2.5 million in category 2. You're looking at about 1.3 million in category 3. And again, your 120 grand is not a small amount. I mean, we sell a fire Rover for 110, 111 grand, fully in with installation. So, again, these costs are something that can be avoided. Now, if we look at the estimated number of waste fires attributed to lithium-ion batteries, again, you're seeing a same breakout, and almost 99% of the incidences, were 4 hours or more in the inability to control the incident. So, we really got to look at this. Another issue is injuries and deaths. And again, we're lucky in waste and recycling. It was the 5th most dangerous. It actually just moved down the list to the 6th most dangerous occupation in the U.S. But and so a lot of focus is put on to slow down and get around, and campaigns by some of the associations like the SWANA and NWRA. They're really good associations in the industry. But really, what you look at it, most of the deaths are an accidental or some sort of it's typically not an employee that's had that happen, even though some of the employees from an explosion perspective have been a result in the past 3-4 years. But really, a lot of the injuries occur to the fire department, to the fire professionals that are fighting the fires. So on one hand, it's a great thing. You're not having employee injuries, but at the same time, any injury that's unnecessary, if you get rid of the fire, those definitely can be avoided. Now, when I start to look at insurance, because insurance is a big part of this, waste and recycling, this is the claims data from the top 5 insurers in 2018 that actually left the industry. They started running for the hills, and this is, Nathan Bernard has given me a ton of this data. But really, the idea was that, like in 16, 17, and 18, carriers were leaving at a crazy pace. And at that time, a lot of people were saying that I was going out, and they were like, Ryan, stop talking, because you're sharing an issue that we have. It's our, this is our baggage with the insurance company. And what was interesting again is that, like, the insurance companies don't care what I have to say, right? What they care about is claims data, and whether it's an investment. It's purely an investment, right? Their actuaries are looking at it saying, what's my risk mitigation, or what's my risk? So shredders were huge, like, as an increase. And again, we see those in scrap metal, where you would have a lot of lithium ion batteries that were getting into all parts of the operation versus the old hazards that were happening on the front end, where you could pre-sort them out. Lithium ion battery specific fires, these are claims. Hotspots, equipment. So a lot of these are due to lithium ion batteries, or the growth could be due to more lithium ion batteries. So again, the issues, and this is what Nathan had basically said, that you might be uninsurable if you have issues. If you have no losses, you're still getting, you're still getting an increase in your savings. So, or in your insurance coverage. So really, for us, it's been how do we bring the insurers back in the industry when there's an inherent fire risk? And there are tons of occupancies out there, as you guys know, wood processing and refining and and a ton of others from a manufacturing perspective where there is a risk of fires inherent in the operation. So as an industry, we need to find solutions where the insurance companies can mitigate the risk as an overall portfolio. Of course, as an operator, you have to look at it at a site level and to try to find those solutions. So really, when you look at solutions, of course, I mean, I believe that we have a patented solution that has worked and is still working and will continue to work in the future. So I'm extremely partial to it for more than just the fact that it's really based on results. And I've been working with a ton of insurers to bring them back into the industry because a lot of them are like, we didn't even know you existed. When they do, they start to require some sort of technology to in an effort to get lower rates or even to get covered. So this was the combinational approach to firefighting, and I'll walk into this. But there was a ton of work that needed to be done from an operational perspective. I mean, I can tell you, there was one of my close friends. I mean, he basically did a ton of audits, and he would look at a lot of these sites, and they would say that they had a disaster response plan. They would say that they had a fire response plan, but really at the end of the day, a lot of it was just written in books, and it wasn't ever trained, and it wasn't, something that the operators really instilled in their culture, and that was something that needed to be done. So really, the combinational approach to firefighting is to make sure that you put all the processes, people, and everything in place, because really the goal is not to have a major fire incident. Again, we're okay with having fires. We understand that there's inherent risk. Even insurance companies are okay with you having an inherent risk of fire in your industry. The question is, can you control your problem? And so this has really been the big piece that, like, if you look at Wish standard is 4 hours. So prior days, you'd have prevention. If a fire started, then professional response, and they had 4 hours before, and it was still considered a successful incident. You could have a ton of damage. For us, we look at it and we say, for us at Fire Rover, it's prevention, which is, you have to be a good operator. Good operators have less fires. And then you have professional response. So again, a lot of big part of being a good operator is making sure that your professional response is prepared and ready to come on site and fight your fire. They understand where the lock boxes are. They understand if you have a CAF system that's waiting for them to, before they get full water and hoses, and you have to have the right things there for them. But then really focused, and that's what we focus on, is the internal response. I want to catch a heat abnormality, and I want to deal with that heat abnormality as fast as possible. Not only am I going to call the fire department, so if I see heat, I'm going to respond to it. I'm going to verify and detect what it is. I'm going to see it. I'm going to verify it. And then I'm going to call the fire department. I'm going to call someone who's on site if they're there. And then I'm also going to spray it and deal with it. So from my perspective and from our perspective, we're focusing on that initial 10 minutes before a fire can either start or when it's in its incipient stage, and when we're able to deal with it, because everybody knows a smaller fire is easier to deal with. So again, we look at, we're trying to catch an incipient stage. We do have a pre-incipient stage, so I can set the tripwire earlier in the process as possible for some instances and some types of some types of specific operations like ASR. We can see a ton of heat abnormalities in ASR. We spray them with environmentally cooling agent, and you never see a flame, and everything works out great. So again, what we use is it's early detection. We have human beings that are in UL certified facilities, highly trained agents. They're not only looking at the detection, but they're verifying if there's a fire. These are very active locations. So, you have to set your tripwire early, right? You have to set it low enough that forklifts will still cause, equipment still causes. So you get a ton of false positives. We have a human being that looks at it, verifies it, and then that human being can verify, and they can, number one, they can call the fire department and call on-site help or a fire brigade, and number two, they can respond to the fire remotely 24/7, 7 days a week, 365. So really, this is the Fire Rover unit. It's a 20 by 8 by 8 container. It's got a 22-foot mast on an outdoor unit. It's got, indoors you're going to see that it's custom piped in, and you're going to have 2 cameras and a nozzle. Inside the box, it's heated, it's cooled. So we have some that are as far as Calgary. We have some as low as as low as Miami and Texas and Nevada in the desert. It's heated again, it's cooled, it's nitrogen powered, and we have 1,000-gallon tank. So I'll get into a lot of this. We really have 4 solutions, right? One is the thermal only. So we do thermal detection. We call the fire department, or we call on site, fire brigade on site response. 2, the Fire Rover solution. That's our standard box solution. It just needs internet, electricity, and a pad. It'll shoot for 6 to 10 minutes. 12 minutes if we're using less pressure, but it'll shoot from 6 to 10 minutes. But most of the time, we're putting out 20-second fires. We shoot it, we put it out, we have fire brigade, it goes back. We'll use 2% of our tank. We've developed the Fire Rover sprinkler replacement. So there's over 90 facilities that we have currently where the Fire Rover is the only type of fire suppression. But we also have facilities where they've been formally from a variance or from a approval from the jurisdiction in lithium-ion battery specific operations to use our Fire Rover system as a sprinkler replacement. And then we also have variances, Fire Rover in lieu of a sprinkler system. And with that, we actually have a Fire Rover quick connect nozzle. And then we also do a 4G backup. And there's a few things that we need to do to ensure that we can keep the water going for over 40 minutes. And then we also have the Fire Rover deluge system, which is a boxless solution that we basically use the existing fire pressure, and we turn it into a large cameras and nozzles all over. And I'll show you an example of those. So really, this is a controlled burn, and so I'm going to show you how it works. I mean, basically, this is in Detroit, so this is one of our facilities. You're going to see on a screen, you're going to see the thermal cameras, and I'm going to go back. This is the beauty. I'm going live, so I hope you guys are having fun with this. But really, there's 4 different cameras. There's, so when I tell people that we're selling them a camera, I mean, it's more than that. It's the thermal camera, and then it's HD cameras, and it's all the different pieces that go with it. But really, this is the Fire Rover shooting. It's going a little slow right now. It just had to catch up from a buffering perspective. But the other thing is, I mean, this thing will shoot about 150 feet. There's a joystick on their desk from our agent perspective. And again, we can shoot through darkness, we can shoot through smoke and heat, but we can get a pretty good range. So this is an example of a tip floor. Inside here, one of the things that amazed me, as we are on the front row of a lot of our customers, so we can see a lot of these incidents develop. And again, you're more than welcome to visit. Most of them are on YouTube, our Fire Rover YouTube page. So again, if you want to see the new ones as they come out, just become a subscriber for the Fire Rover YouTube page. But what we're going to see again is that there was a fire. This is our agent is looking there. You saw one of the employees evacuate. And the building fills with smoke relatively quickly. I mean, this was real time. So we're talking. It was literally like within minutes. I think it was less than a minute. But again, we're going to spray this. We have smoke, but we're using our other cameras. We're going to shoot. There was a little fire on the tip floor, and then there's also one in the infeed line. And again, we're going to have it out, and we still have 80%, 90% left of our tank. This is an environmentally friendly cooling agent. There is no cleanup. It evaporates, and these guys go back to work. So again, no hard costs, no no issues that you would see that will have you shut down for the 4 hours. So if you look at it, this is an example of a hazard material facility. So we do a ton of hazardous materials. Basically they're taking chemicals and recycling them. I mean, this is the 5th pallet in a chemical that's been reacting, which again, that's not a good thing, right? I mean, in the old days, you would either have to take that out, a human being would have to take it out with a forklift, or it would start a domino effect on every single, everything goes up. So here we saw it, we're looking at it. We basically let them know on site. So you'll see one of the employees comes out in a bunny suit, and he's here waiting for our go ahead. Now it looks like we're just spraying, but if you look at the nozzle, I mean, we are literally hitting the fifth pallet. So we see it, we know when the danger is not there, and we know when there's not a heat abnormality. And so it's something where they can, now that they've done this, they can remove the other pallets. And again, the product evaporates. So we were there for 20 seconds. They move them, and we're going to see if this started to heat again, we'd start to shoot it again. So we are there. We don't just disappear. We're there 24/7, and the key is that we don't just release. We do more than release, right? We release, we watch, and then we're ready to release again if we need to. So let's get in a couple more incidences. We do a ton of preemptive maintenance. So this is a metering drum. And what happens here is that, like, when there's some sort of an obstacle gets into the drum, it starts to overheat. When we see that heat, we'll actually shut down the system, and then we'll spray it, right? But again, I think you're going to see right here, here's a camera. We see a fire, it literally shuts down all the conveyors. And then what we're going to do in here is we're going to charge it. And actually, that's a fire extinguisher. This is us, a minute 40, right? We're putting this fire out, and you'll see we make pretty quick work of it. But really, the big thing here is that we can look from a preemptive maintenance perspective, and if a lithium-ion battery gets caught in there or something else, we're there to handle it. And it's funny because a lot of times we put out these, like, one lithium-ion battery in a tip floor. People want to see, like, hey, can you put out a real fire? Well, there's a ton of real fires. We put out a rubber feedstock fire in less than 4.5 minutes before the fire department arrived. That's in here, but you can definitely see that at the Fire Rover YouTube page. But this is one of those things where loader operators put out a lot of fires, right? I mean, they're on the front lines and they're putting fires out by grabbing a lithium-ion battery. They throw it outside, they hit it a couple times, or they spray it with water, and everything's good. When you're dealing with a deep-seated fire, what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to pre-wet, and then then start to pull away a layer, pre-wet, a layer, pre-wet. Again, when you introduce it to oxygen, you see what's happening. And this is one of our C&D operators, but unfortunately, they had it's a wood product, and then they had an accelerant that was in there, and they don't know what the accelerant was, and this thing looks messy. And we're going to shoot, it's at 4 minutes, but this is a 9-minute video. But what you're going to see is, once we're going to start making progress, we move around. We're always shooting at the hottest spot. We start make progress. There's no spot in there that's hotter than 580 degrees. So, we know that's happening. And again, we call the fire department. They're going to arrive on scene. So, once the fire department gets here, I mean, could you imagine if we weren't spraying for, the 8 minutes that we were spraying? You're still seeing we're going after, it's being moved by our operator. And we are making progress. And then here comes the fire department at the end, to really finish it and do final extinguishment. But this fire, there was no damage. There was no, there was definitely cleanup, but there was no damage to the building. And most importantly, there wasn't an insurance claim, which is the last thing that you want to have these days, is that insurance claim. So, and I can get to, okay, sorry about that. Okay. All right. So this is a lithium-ion battery fire. And again, this is what most of the fires look like. There's the middle of the night, you got a tip floor, battery goes off. You're going to see it again from a different angle. It goes off, it explodes. It's sitting there, it's heating. Before it gets to thermal runaway, I'm spraying it, or one of my operators is spraying it. We put it out, and there's a video sent in the morning, and nobody knows knows the wiser. So got a ton of these, but so this is the one I was talking about with the rubber fire. And one of the things that's nice about this is we collect, or we protect the collateral assets. So what's going to happen is we're going to see a fire. This was all in real time. And again, the building is where a lot of the outside of the public, outside, the building is important. So what you're going to see here is we're using our encapsulator agent on it. I mean, our operator is trained to know to spray the collateral assets so that any embers go over, they don't start burning the building. And again, you'll just see us work through this in real time, a minute 40. We called the fire department to arrive on scene, and we're doing everything we can. And you'll see around 4 minutes, we'll have the fire out, and we'll have built-in fire watch, and we still have 40% left of our tank. So right there, you're going to see. And again, if something else happens and we know it, we're going to go at it. But we've gotten to a point now where it's controllable. And again, in this case, the fire department came about 5 minutes after this event completed. So and here's the last one that I'll show. This is one of our hazard material facilities, and people always ask, like, hey, we have a rough environment. I mean, this is for rough environments. Any sort of operation where you have an industrial line of sight, our solution, I mean, this is filled with dust. This is combustible dust, right? Not only are we putting out this fire, but we're also doing it and dealing with it in this type of dust, in this type of environment. We're in the middle of the desert. And we guarantee that our operation will work. And that's part of the package that we put together for our clients. So again, we're going to shoot this bad boy, and we're going to have the fire out. But most importantly, we can still see, right? And again, we use the combination of our thermal and our HD cameras to do so. So I will, at this point, we have a ton of different types of applications, but really the idea, if you need a sprinkler system for indoor or outdoor, and you have a facility that has a 40-foot, roof, and, sprinkler systems are amazing. They were created for, for high-rise buildings and for, homes, right? I mean, they're great, right? But, our type of solution is, in my mind, the way of the future. And, again, we're fortunate to have the patent on it. And what I'll do is I'll show you, a bunch of different types of, applications. This is a refinery that we're working on. This is a hanger protection. So if you think of the deluge system versus a full deluge system, ours doesn't have false alarms. And we also have fire department hookups. So the idea is we can spray on as quickly as possible, but we have a human being that knows where to aim it, as opposed to the complete delusion and the amount of water that gets wasted and causes damage. This is an example of one of our waste, or our variants for sprinkler systems. And again, they required a number of different things, and this is where I'll show you. They required for us to get the variants that we could meet the 40-minute amount of time from a water perspective. So that's where we have the quick connects that have basically been designed for the fire department to get there and fight these fires. And what's been nice is that we have a solution where this is a lithium-ion battery operation, and we did the same thing there. So if you've heard about the fire professionals who got basically, I don't want to say they got hurt from a lithium-ion battery operation in Arizona. Well, most fire departments are now taking they're taking a defensive approach when they get to any facility that has lithium-ion batteries. Now, again, waste to recycling is a little bit different because we don't have the amount of lithium-ion batteries in an area that they would be if they were powering a bank of computers or others. So there's a ton of different hazards that are out there. But when you're dealing with a decent amount, the hazard is real, and you definitely don't want people fighting the fire. This is an example of our Fire Rover boxless solution. So this is where we literally build our system onto an existing infrastructure. And again, we can shoot over 200 feet in these. This specifically is a waste to energy facility. It's basically a big power plant. And we're able to shoot about 70 feet. You'll see, we actually have 2 on the tip floor, and then we have 3 nozzles on deck. And we put out some pretty nasty lithium-ion battery fires inside all this type of material, as you can imagine. We allow the control room. We can create control, so it won't just be our monitors, but it'll be someone from the facility, fighting the fire as well as a backup. And again, we do have portable suppression units and cap systems that we use. These are in combination with the thermal, and you're able to shoot the um, same type of distance. And these are great for fire departments when they get on scene. While they're setting up, and it takes them 10 minutes to set up and deciding whether they're going to fight your fire. You have one of these for them to really get in and start to fight. And again, you're using your environmentally friendly cooling agent on these. So, we've been fortunate to be awarded, but really, I think, and again, we have 8 of the top 10 waste and recycling companies in the U.S. and Canada. But really, I mean, when you look at this industry, there's a lot of cost and a lot of pressure that's being put on the waste and recyclers to solve the problem, and there's all of this is being basically borne by unfairly. It's being borne by the operators and the public. So, really important that we get the producers to not only spend money trying to educate the public on not putting batteries into curbside recycling and teaching them how to recycle properly. But the issue for every person that you teach that to, there's 10 more batteries that are coming. And the global use of batteries has gotten, if you look at any of the numbers, I mean, we're talking 10 times what we use today, and in the next 10 years. So it's definitely something that we need to keep an eye on, and we need to develop solutions for. And we need to continuously keep our eye on the hazards and trying to make sure that we mitigate the risk and damage, and make sure that we keep a healthy industry. Because again, the goal is not to put any of this material inside a landfill, which we all know, is bad, right? So if we're reusing, reduce, reuse, the material, and that's the best for all of us, public, environment, etc. So I appreciate the time. If you have questions, again, you can get a PDF copy of my annual report. That's going to come out in the next 30 days. But there's also 3 others if you are interested in those. But again, it's I can send you a PDF copy. My email's here, and feel free to link in with me. I do a ton of sharing on those, so feel free to link in with me or send me an email, and I'm happy to send you a copy. And I hope you have a great show.